Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. The murder of Charlie Kirk was a despicable act. It was wrong, and there should be no place in our society for this type of political violence. No matter what anyone may have thought about Charlie Kirk or the things he said, he had every right to say them. The First Amendment is designed to protect the rights of people to say things some may find offensive. In fact, that's why it's there. You don't need the First Amendment to protect speech everyone agrees with, and you can't have a democracy if people are afraid to speak. Now, a few hours after Charlie Kirk died, Utah Governor Spencer Cox said this.
Our nation is broken. We've had political assassinations recently in Minnesota. We had an attempted assassination on the governor of Pennsylvania. And we had an attempted assassination on a presidential candidate and former president of the United States, and now current president of the United States. Nothing I say can unite us as a country. Nothing I can say right now can fix what is broken.
This country is broken. And as the governor said, I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if it can be fixed or if we have reached a tipping point for which there is no return. We saw this type of violence in 1968 with a slew of political assassinations, and we eventually came through it. But just because we found our way out of the darkness that time doesn't mean we'll find the light this time. If anything, there are signs that are very disheartening. Here was President Donald Trump the night of the assassination.
It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives.
I wish the president had used this moment to lower the rhetoric, but he didn't. So I'm forced to point out that demonizing and dehumanizing political opponents has been long Donald Trump's trademark. Likewise, the notion that political violence is the exclusive purview of the left is incredibly disheartening. Here is just a partial list of the political violence we have seen in recent years. From the shootings of Gabby Gifford and Steve Scalise, to the assassination attempts on Donald Trump, to the murders in Minnesota by a gunman who had a list of Democrats he wanted to kill, to the cowardly murder of Charlie Kirk in Utah. I'm still struggling to understand where we go from here. So the day after Kirk's shooting, I spoke to State Senator Joe Gruters, who is now the chairman of the Republican National Committee. Joe, you and I have known each other for a long time, and I was actually looking forward to doing this interview right after you had gotten named RNC chair. You know, I know this is a big moment for you, but I feel the need to just sort of have a conversation with you, and maybe it's better this is the conversation we have, because I've always had a lot of respect for you, Joe, and the way you approach politics. And I'm just wondering, you know, here we are, we're a little more than 24 hours taping this after Charlie Kirk has been murdered. What are your thoughts right now, both about that incident and about where we go from here?
Well, first off, you know, prayers to Charlie's family, his wife, his kids. He was a husband, he was a father, he was a friend, he was one of the leaders of our cause and movement. And so the tragic death is absolutely terrible. It's disgusting, and it's going to have ripple effects across the party, because you can go to any college campus in the country and people will know whether they support him or they don't support him. They knew who Charlie Kirk is, and that's been that way for the last 10 plus years. And so you have a whole generation of people who've grown up listening to Charlie and have him go to these college campuses, preach free speech, talk about his relationship and his faith with God. And he's literally been just an incredible leader for our entire movement, and his loss will be felt for a long time. It's devastating to the Republican Party and to the conservative movement.
I'm going to say this. I think his death in this manner is devastating to the nation. And I think that it's problematic and symptomatic of something much, much larger, which is the increasing nature of political violence on both the right and the left. And I'm just trying to figure out where we go from here.
Listen, we gotta pray and we gotta move on, and we have to do what we can to try to reject the idea that if you don't like somebody or if you don't like their ideas that you have to resort to violence. I think that the far too often on the left, I don't think the right is radicalized as much as you see what's on the left. And I think the left, maybe it's the past 20 years of the desensitizing of the schools through social media and through things like this, where the most disgusting thing that I saw was all of the social media posts of people celebrating. And here you have a guy who is preaching respect, preaching freedom of speech, trying to bring dialogue to college campuses, regardless of where you stood. He would sit and listen to you and give you a response. You may not like it, but he always wanted to have the agree to disagree. And the fact that the only way they could stop him is with a bullet, to me, you're exactly right. It shows you where we're at with this country. I think that we're nearing the cliff, and I think that certainly our friends on the left need to get a grip, and they need to figure out what's really important. And it's certainly the basic right of human life, and they need to look at that and move forward.
Joe, let me interrupt. I mean, and again, I've always had a great deal of respect for you, and I understand your role is as RNC chairman now. You speak for the Republican Party. After the president, and the vice president, you're probably the voice for the Republican Party now. And you can't just say this is an issue on the left. There's rhetoric on both sides. There's angry rhetoric on the Republican side. I don't need to remind you of the Minnesota lawmakers, or going all the way back to Gabby Giffords, the attempted kidnapping of Gretchen Whitmer and Nancy Pelosi and her husband. We can do the back and forth in terms of things that the right has said, things that the left has said. I'm just trying to, if your position is this is an issue on the left, we don't have to worry about what's going on in our house, then I think we are lost as a country.
Listen, violence is never the answer, no matter what. No matter what side you're on, violence is not the answer. And you brought up a lot of different instances where I think it was not politically motivated. Where if you look at the last couple of events that happened on our side, where the former president, now the current president, Donald J. Trump, was almost killed in Butler, Pennsylvania. The successful assassination of Charlie Kirk yesterday. We're at a spot now to where we have to go back to the drawing board. People have to look at what's important, and we cannot. Violence is never the answer. That's the most important thing. And it seems like from what I'm reading on social media and what I'm seeing from responses from people is people were celebrating the fact that this guy got shot. And it's,
well,
to me.
I mean, but Joe, that's the problem. Social media isn't real. Social media is about algorithms, and the loudest, craziest voices get expanded on. And, I guarantee you at some point we're going to find out that there are outside actors, foreign governments playing to move that along and push that to increase the divisions in this country. But aside from social media, and, again, I'm just trying to come back. Do you see that? So you just see this as an issue that the left needs to deal with. There is nothing on the Republican side, even?
Jim, of course, you have bad actors on both sides. There's no question about that. We definitely have to tone down the rhetoric on both sides. But in this case, obviously, I think it was meant to silence a voice, a conservative voice, a leading voice of our movement. and they were successful. And I think the Republican Party is going to suffer for a long time. He had such a major impact on our country, on the younger generation, and it's like I said, it's devastating for our party. And I think that, but yes, I think the left is far more dangerous right now than the right. I think most people on the right would rather pray for their enemies, where the left, if they can't get what they want, it seems like they want to resort to the sword. And I think that and I think that's the crisis that we're facing.
Really, I swear to God, I don't see that as being overwhelmingly that the left only turns to the sword and the right kneels and prays. Again, Charlie Kirk should have had the right to speak as he wants to. I always appreciate the fact that he went to college campuses, and his basic motto was, prove me wrong. You disagree with my idea? Prove me wrong. That is what we should be doing. But that's right. I'm worried. I am just as worried about the rhetoric, that I hear, and I want a leader. I really want a leader to bring us together, and I'm worried about what the president is doing with this when he says that it's the leftists, that he says we've got to go after them. I don't know that brings us together as a country. That only seems going to be further dividing us.
I think there's no greater unifier than the president and what he's trying to do with the country. Remember, this is a guy who's given up everything to literally go to bat for the average working American out there. And I think that his policies bring people together. I think that he's doing a phenomenal job. And listen, we're going to move past this, and I hope people will look at what people say and have just an ounce of respect for other people. And you should never have violence. And yes, I agree. Violence is never the answer on either side. This was an absolute tragedy. I feel terrible for his family. I feel terrible for my fellow Republicans and the conservatives who looked at Charlie as one of our leaders. And it's just, like I said, it's a devastating event. And yes, when you have one of your, you could say, commanding generals get taken down in this battle of ideas, yes, our side is certainly going to be looking at what caused
retribution?
This. No retribution. Because like I said, look at what happened on the college campuses all across the country last night. They're not going and protesting. They're going and praying, and they're holding vigils, and they're talking about what a great job he did. And I think that's the difference. I think if the roles were reversed, people would be, probably marching in the streets. And our side doesn't do that. And listen, we have to do better as a country, but we have to say that violence is not the answer. And any type of the violent retribution, any type of violent response should be dealt with swiftly, and these should be held accountable. And certainly, speaking of college campuses, should be where you have where a healthy exchange of ideas is a normal, common occurrence. Nobody did it better than Charlie Kirk. You never see him get upset or raise his voice. As a matter of fact, even when he was getting punched verbally over and over again, I always respected him because he always kept his cool, and he was always able to handle people with a kindness. And we need more of that. We need more people to be kind and less anger out there and less hate.
Well, I certainly agree with that. Joe, as always, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm still not sure how we get ourselves out of this hole, but maybe if we stop digging that hole deeper, that would be a good start. Now, when we come back, I'll talk to Jennifer Jenkins, a former school board member from Brevard County, who is running to be the Democratic nominee for the United States Senate. Stay with us. Welcome back. Jennifer Jenkins is hoping to be the Democratic nominee for the United States Senate, who will take on Republican Ashley Moody next year. Jenkins became a Democratic star when she ran and won a school board seat in the Republican stronghold of Brevard County. Now, normally I start an interview like this by asking, why are they running? But instead, we started with the issue of political violence. Did you look at what happened in Utah this week or any of the past acts and think to yourself, why do I want to put myself in that position? Did it give you any second thoughts?
Yeah. First, I do want to acknowledge what happened to Charlie Kirk, because he's a human being and he's a father. And no matter how much I didn't disagree with the majority of the things that he said, political violence is never acceptable. I appreciate that question, because I'd be lying if I said I didn't. After I heard the news, I felt very uncomfortable. I did. My husband too, it was one of the first things we talked about, because I have faced credible threats to myself and my family in the past, and actually honestly in the recent present as well. And it's scary. It's scary that we live in a time where it's no longer acceptable or comfortable to speak your mind.
And yet you go forward. Why did you make the decision to continue in this process? I'm sure your husband told you it's probably not worth it.
I'm not comparing what happened to Charlie to the things I experienced, because obviously I didn't lose my life. My daughter gets to have her parent. I do, though, reflect on my own personal experience. And there were moments throughout my school board tenure where I was very scared. But I pushed through. I had to. Honestly, a lot of people can, congratulate me for being so brave and so strong in those moments, because it was relentless. I had people threaten my life. I had them brandish weapons next to my daughter's bedroom. I had them put her location on the internet when she was on play dates. Recently, I had somebody create an account with her name with 911 at the end and threaten my life, threaten her life, put her face on like pornographic images. And I always get a little defensive when they congratulate me for being so brave, because I do admit, I cried every single day and I was very scared. But unfortunately, at some point, you also become desensitized to what's happening to you, which is dangerous and scary. But then you learn how to cope. And my cope was leaning on the people who felt like I was being their voice when they didn't feel comfortable or safe having their own or using their own. And looking at my daughter and telling myself that I wanted to be able to be proud one day. Not that I would shame anyone for backing out in these situations, because they're scary and they're truly dangerous. But I wanted to personally feel proud to tell her that I didn't back down, and to create a strong example of a woman for her.
I was watching the press conference the day Charlie Kirk was shot, and the Utah governor spoke in a way that I definitely relate to. He just said our country is broken and he doesn't know how to fix it. And I don't think there are true words that have been spoken. How do you think we got to this point?
I agree. I do think we're broken. I think we've got sucked into this divisive culture, where we use moments of grief as a weapon, instead of a moment where we can share humanity. Yesterday was the anniversary of 9/11. I mean, I lived there when that happened. That was a horrible, horrible, tragic moment, but it was a moment where we all came together in a moment of humanity. And I think it's been a really long time since we've reacted in that manner to something tragic. And I think as leaders have a responsibility, yes, to tell the truth, yes, to hold people accountable, but to set the tone, that we can disagree. We can call out policies that harm communities that we care about, but we can do it without inciting violence, to acknowledge the words that we're using matter, to model how to disagree. I think we all could be more cognizant of the language that we're using when we criticize people and policies.
Has it caused you to reflect on any of the things that you've said in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it causes everyone to think that way. I can't say that I've reflected and feel ashamed for anything I've said, but I think it would be irresponsible to pretend that we don't all play a part in this and that we don't all need to reflect on things that we've said in our tone and to try to do better. You know, I don't hold myself to a higher standard than I do my 9-year-old. You know, we all make mistakes. We all use words and tones that we shouldn't, and we need to reflect on those and change it and try to do better next time.
This is a big jump to move from a school board to running for the United States Senate. Why this race? Why this moment?
You know, I really feel like the United States Senate is where Florida's future and my daughter's future is going to be decided. From reproductive rights to genuinely our economic policy, it's her future. And if we want to talk about how we want different outcomes, we're going to need different people who are sitting at that table. People like myself who know what it's like to struggle every single day with rising costs, whether it's our homeowners insurance or groceries and gas. Someone who wants to defend public schools so every kid has access to opportunity, and someone who's willing to stand up against political extremism and the divisiveness and just try to set a different tone. You know, I think it's time that we no longer have career politicians who are continuously running for these offices. We need a fresh start in Washington with leaders who will genuinely put people first.
For those who don't know much about you, and there's a lot of folks in South Florida here who may not know who you are, how do you introduce yourself? How do you describe yourself? What's your background?
Yeah, I am an educator. I'm a licensed speech language pathologist. I graduated from UCF. I'm married to a middle school civics teacher who's been teaching for, I think, 16 years now. And I'm a mom to my beautiful little girl, Olive, who just turned 9 this summer, who goes to public schools. I am someone who grew up in a working class family. My mom had an autoimmune disease my whole life. Unfortunately, she passed away 2 years ago. My dad worked in law enforcement in New York City. I am a everyday person like you. I've worked 2 jobs since I graduated college because, you know, we're both educators working in the lowest paid state in the country. I know what it's like to worry about affording daycare for my daughter when she was born. You know, 2 weeks ago, my air conditioning went out. I know what it feels like to freak out that I have a $7,000 bill that I'm not prepared for. And I'm just someone who truly wants to hear from you, even if we aren't registered to the same party, because I just truly believe that we can continuously learn from one another, and we truly need representatives who are willing to do that.
Florida is a state that overwhelmingly now favors Republicans. How does a Democrat win in the state of Florida?
I think too often Democrats are talking at people instead of listening to them. I think that we have to admit that in some instances we've walked away from entire communities because we feel like it's too hard to win them or to win them back. We stop showing up in places where people are hurting and we fail to connect policy to their everyday lives. You know, I live in a mid-sized deep red county. I won by doing the exact opposite of that. I showed up, I listened, and I built trust across party lines. My county voted for Donald Trump by 17 points that year, and I defeated that Republican incumbent who was well known by nearly 10. So I think as a statewide U.S. Senate candidate, it's imperative that we go everywhere. We talk to everyone, we listen to everyone, and we make sure that no community in Florida is feeling like they're being written off, because that's how we build trust and that's how we win.
We'll be right back after the break. Well, that's all the time we have today. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to contact me at jdefede@cbs.com. I do enjoy hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.